Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. And in today's episode, who's going to fill out the Phillies' depth roles on their roster? It's a very important thing that could differentiate themselves from the other top teams in baseball. We'll discuss on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air for 97.5 The Fanatic, doing sports talk radio in the city of Philadelphia for 5 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 3 seasons, and this is my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure that you're rating and reviewing. If you're watching this in podcast form, we're available wherever you get your podcasts. If you're checking us out on YouTube, go to the Locked On Phillies YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. It'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It's free. It's easy. It really, really helps me out. So if you enjoy the content for Locked On Phillies, or maybe you're like, oh, this guy is wrong about everything, but I want to be up to date on all the Phillies information because I'm a Phillies fan. Whatever the case, hit that subscribe button. I appreciate everyone who's already done that and everyone who's going to. In today's episode, we're going to start by looking at some of the depth roles for the Philadelphia Phillies. Not death rolls like a crocodile. No, depth with a P in there. Like, who's going to round out the roster on opening day? Because there's a group of guys that have kind of rotated solidly for the Philadelphia Phillies recently that deserve consideration, but it seems like it could be only one of them that makes the team, so we will discuss that. Also, it looks like Alec Bohm is here to stay. The graphic says Alex Bohm, probably because it's Alex Bregman is the guy that's been on my mind. He signed, so now there's not really a path to another third baseman, and it already seemed like Bohm was going to be here. We'll talk about that. And what's up with Taijuan Walker? There have been some interesting comments out of camp. Where does that situation stand as the pitchers and catchers reported yesterday? So let's start with this depth role situation, right? The Phillies are going to have 8 bullpen pitchers and 5 starting pitchers, or maybe they go with the 6-man rotation and then it's 6 and 7, whatever. Either way, the combination there is going to be 13 guys, which means you have room for 13 more to make the 26-man opening day roster. And you're going to have the 8 guys that start. The DH and Kyle Schwarber put you at 9, and that gives you room for 4 more players. Now, those 4 players that are going to exist as depth roles for the team, not starters. We know that Edmundo Sosa is absolutely going to be one. We know that whoever doesn't win the starting center fielder job between Johan Rojas and Brandon Marsh is absolutely going to be one. And we know that whoever the backup catcher to JT Realmuto, whether that's Rafael Marchand or Garrett Stubbs, whatever player that is absolutely going to be one. So by my math, let's add 8 to 5, that's 13. Add 9 on that. That is 22. And then you have room for 4 more players, and we just went through 3. That leaves 1 spot left, folks. It seems like the Phillies pretty much have a 2-man race or a lockdown. This is the guy at every spot on the roster besides, that backup, the 8th bullpen spot, which that'll be a conversation for a different day, one that we've kind of had. But as far as position players are concerned, there's 1 more spot. So who gets it? Because they have a lot of interesting options the Philadelphia Phillies have. Now, we have seen guys in the past in this role, and in a certain way, they've all kind of contributed because this organization has done a really good job of getting contributions when they need to have their depth pieces. Now, it doesn't work in the postseason because, frankly, you're not playing these guys in the postseason. You're playing your stars, and if the stars don't hit, you're going to get knocked out, and that's what's happened to the Phillies a couple times. But listen to some of the names that are potential candidates for this extra role. Of course, you've got Kody Clemens. Of course, you've got Weston Wilson, but you're also going to take a look at guys like Cal Stevenson and Buddy Kennedy. So who of those 4? Those are probably the main 4 that you're looking at. Like Rodolfo Castro is back with the organization after they I guess waived him and then brought him back or maybe they let him clear waivers. Either way, he's not in the conversation for making this team. He just hasn't been good enough. He came over as a utility type of guy in that Bailey Falter trade with the Pirates a couple years back. Don't see that happening. I do think it's legitimately down to these 4 guys. I don't think there's anyone else that's going to make their way into the conversation. But 4 guys for one spot means it's going to be a heated competition. The pros and cons of each of these guys, let's run through it. So let's start with Kody Clemens. He is the most experienced at the major league level of these guys, and certainly so in Philadelphia with this organization. He's got the pedigree, with his dad being the Rocket, Roger Clemens. He's had some big moments for this team. He is a solidly versatile defender. He's not really plus in anything crazy, right? Like he's just a okay Major League Baseball player. And I say just okay for like compared to Bryce Harper, compared to Trey Turner, compared to these guys that like he's going to be backing up if he is indeed in this spot. He's not a world beater, but he's been solid for them. He's risen to the occasion, and I imagine he's pretty comfortable in the role. Those are the pros for Kody Clemens. I believe he is the odds-on favorite to be this depth role, but he's normally an infielder. And it seems like the weaker spot on the roster is going to be outfield, which is why this next guy is in second place before they even take the field down there in spring training. This would be the second most likely to me guy to make the opening day roster as a depth role, and that would be Weston Wilson. Now, we talked about Kody Clemens having some clutch moments and everything. Do you realize Weston Wilson against left-handed pitchers was one of the best hitters on the planet last year? Now, not a big sample size, but he was really, really good against lefties. And he was asked to do a good amount last year because there were a bunch of guys that went down with like hamstring injuries and stuff all together at once in like that bad collapse part of the season. But remember, he hit for the cycle. That cannot be understated. I was at that game. It was wild. Never expected to see that. Weston Wilson is interesting because he's probably naturally an infielder, but he has played outfield when the Phillies have had him up at points. And he is really good against lefties. He puts together a good approach to the plate. He might have the highest ceiling, but Kody Clemens has been more proven. So do you take the gamble on the more versatile defender in hopes that he continues to hit at that level, or do you stay safe with the guy that you know you can win with as a depth piece in Kody Clemens? It's a tough call. It's something that'll be very difficult to figure out as we go through spring training. The other 2 guys are a pretty wide gap, I think, lesser, and that's Cal Stevenson and Buddy Kennedy. And Cal Stevenson's probably the better overall player, but we're splitting hairs here. Like Cal Stevenson has a little bit more experience than Buddy Kennedy. Buddy Kennedy was just getting his like first call up this past year. And Buddy Kennedy, the local kid who I never understate that, right? I never understate a guy that grew up rooting for a team from the area, gets a chance to play in that organization, and then gets his opportunity. It feels like there's more motivation there. It feels like there's more focus there. It feels like it's not just, wow, I'm playing professional baseball. It's, wow, I have a greater opportunity than I ever could have even dreamed of. Let's rock. I want to put in all the work possible. And that's not a differentiator for who makes the roster, but it can create a work ethic that shows a taking over of an opportunity more so than you would imagine from a player that looks like that skill level currently. So I don't think Cal Stevenson or Buddy Kennedy are going to be on the roster. Those guys are on the outside looking in. I see this as a real 2-man race with Kody Clemens and Weston Wilson. And you know what? If I had to pick, right, if I was just my feeling, right, and this is not who's going to be better or not. That will be proven on the field in spring training. But who am I rooting for? Am I pulling for any of these guys? I'd like to see it be Weston Wilson. I would. Weston Wilson spent more time at the minor league level than these guys. He has been around for a long time, being a great like quad A type of player where he gets a chance but not a full chance and then goes back down to AAA and tears the cover off the ball. Kody Clemens is a younger player. Weston Wilson has been with the organization for longer. I don't know. I don't know why I'm just drawn to Weston Wilson and the story of what it would be if he was to make the opening day roster, but I feel like that would be one of those lifetime dream come true things for Weston Wilson. And I think that everything he's done is deserving of it. But this is not a team. Like, again, we're not the Washington Nationals. We're not the Miami Marlins. There is no, oh, this is cute. The guy has done all of his work in the minor leagues, so let's give him this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Like, no, Phillies aren't a charity case. They're World Series contenders. So if he's going to make the team, he's going to have to earn his way onto the team. I just think it would be very cool to see that side of the story. Similarly to how Buddy Kennedy, it would be awesome if he somehow did it because he's the local kid. But I would be pulling for Weston Wilson simply based on that storyline. Him and Kody Clemens are the best two options for the job. I already told you Kody Clemens is the inside track candidate for this job. But that'll be, listen, you think spring training isn't intense? It's going to be intense between those four guys because going down to Lehigh versus hanging out at the bank are two very different paths to this season. And being a part of this team with these high expectations and defending as division champs, that's something that people are going to want to be a part of. So it'll be a heated competition for that spot. It's one of the more underrated storylines of spring training, and that's kind of the focus of what you need to know before the guys report. By the way, pitchers and catchers we know are already down there. The rest of the team comes in on the 17th, which I believe is Monday. Let me just double check. Yeah, 17th is Monday coming up. So that's when the whole team will be down there and everybody will get going, including the position players and stuff like that. And you'll see all the guys back. So looking forward to that happening. That's going to be like the full official start of spring training, even though we've had the unofficial start with the pitchers and catchers already down there. And we'll have a lot of stuff to keep an eye on as to who looks good and who doesn't. Now, even though I misspelled his name on the graphic, we're going to talk about Alec Bohm coming up next and why he is staying here. Because as spring training gets ready to set up, well, there was a big move with a signing of a third baseman that was tied to the Phillies a lot. And some commentary about another third baseman out there who seems to be staying where he was. So I'll tell you what's going on around baseball and kind of just look at this whole Alec Bohm. I almost said Alex Bregman. That's going to be so tough to get used to. Alec Bohm situation as spring training breaks. Guys need to have more different names, especially if they play the same position. We'll discuss that coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. All right, you know this about me, if you know me at all. I'm a snacker. You can find me with like a bag of chips or something all the time sitting on the couch, but maybe you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious. I know I've been searching for that my whole life. Got to get in good shape. Post-football season diet starts now. Well, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I mean, they are a great snack. You just grab one of the bags, you pour them in a bowl if you want, eat them right out of the bag, but sit there popping them, watching TV, and you don't just like look down, all of a sudden you have like Doritos crumbs all over, like chip crumbs all over you and stuff like that. And you're like, wow, I feel sluggish. I feel out of shape. This isn't helping with my diet. Wonderful Pistachios are a healthy, nutritious snack that tastes awesome. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. So go ahead and check them out. And if you are like me and you want to get in shape for summer, it starts now. And it starts with snacks like Wonderful Pistachios that are going to get you where you want to be, while also tasting great. Appreciate them sponsoring the pod. Appreciate them giving me something good to snack on while I try and work off these extra pounds from football season. All right, let's go ahead and discuss this Alec Bohm situation because there was probably still somebody. I have to imagine there was somebody in the fan base because I know there's a Phillies fan with every opinion ever, even if it's the craziest thing. And that's why I love you guys. And that's why I love me, because I do that stuff sometimes too. I'm not immune to this, but I imagine there was still somebody who was holding out like concrete hope that Alec Bohm was going to be traded, or a belief that he wasn't going to be back, even though the Phillies are in spring training, at least pitchers and catchers are, and the position players report on Monday. And everyone seems to be saying like Bohm's not getting moved at this point. So this is for you. It's not happening. And that was all but confirmed today. The Red Sox, they have signed Alex Bregman to a lucrative contract, not as lucrative as you thought he was going to get at the start of the offseason. And it took him a while to sign, but the Red Sox have brought in and signed Alex Bregman. So he is now off the table for the Philadelphia Phillies to sign. If they were to trade Alec Bohm, they'd then be stuck without a third baseman of that caliber. Just the guy doesn't exist out there. He's not available. Unless you look at another guy that was rumored to be moved this offseason, and that would be Nolan Arenado, whose time with the St. Louis Cardinals has been a major, major disappointment for a player of his caliber. But today, comments were made by the Cardinals organization. I forget who exactly said it, whether it was their Pobo or their president or whatever, their owner. I don't know who said, but someone high up in the Cardinals brass, I just saw it kind of scrolling through Twitter, said, yeah, it's most likely Nolan Arenado's a St. Louis Cardinal again for this year. He doesn't seem to be going anywhere. So Nolan Arenado seems to be off the table. Alex Bregman seems to be is off the table. And with that, Alec Bohm getting moved is off the table. He is going to be the starting third baseman of the Philadelphia Phillies for the 2025 season. That seems to be concrete. And I don't know if the Phillies absolutely bungled this situation. I don't really know what to make of it. We'll learn more as the season goes on as to what the efforts were and everything, as to what the thought process was. Everything comes out in time. So we'll get some great reporting from some of the guys that covered the team in depth, and we'll find out what happened with the Bohm situation. Did you think his value was more than what it was? And maybe the Phillies did think the value was more than what it was, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? In the moment when it's we have to get rid of this guy, you kind of don't want to undervalue him in any way. And maybe the Phillies were hey, let's see how much we can get. We're only trading Bohm. We're comfortable bringing him back, but we're only trading Bohm if we get this ridiculous offer for him. So we're going to set the bar high. And if you don't meet that bar, we'll hang on to him. That very well could have been the situation. I think this whole commentary about his attitude when his stuff doesn't go his way and sitting him in the postseason, I don't know if it's overblown. I'm not saying I think it's overblown. It could be spot on, and this could be a situation where Alec Bohm has a lot of growing up to do. But there could also be a chance of that being overblown by the outside narrative surrounding this, and that the Phillies are actually pretty comfortable with Alec Bohm coming back. We don't know. There's so many smoke screens in trying to move a player. They could have been trying to trade him just for the sake of altering the roster. And because of those attitude issues, he seemed to be the prime candidate for a move because you didn't have that many tradable contracts. I don't totally know what to make of the whole Alec Bohm saga yet. What I do know is the Phillies were shopping him. Part of the reason was the attitude thing, according to them. His value was not quite to the level that the Phillies thought it was around baseball when they searched for a trade. Nothing got done. He is coming back. He was an all-star starter last year at third base. He will be the third baseman of the Philadelphia Phillies in 2025. These are all things that happen. These are all things that are verifiable and true. So where does this leave us? Well, the first thing I think about is the mentality of the player. So you're telling me that you have a player that is mentally weak when it comes to dealing with adversity at points. I don't want to overstate that because I don't know the extent that it goes to, but we've seen some of the stuff from Alec Bohm where he's slamming bats and helmets and very upset. The I bleep it, I hate this place stuff. He does not have a track record of nothing bothers this guy. He has a closer track record to a lot of stuff bothers this guy. And that's just different personalities, but it's not conducive to team success sometimes. So now you take that player that's looked at that way, and you put him in a situation where pretty publicly the organization said, we're looking to move on from him, or at least we're shopping him, or we're trying to trade him, or we want to see, even if it's crazy value, we would move him for something. That probably doesn't feel great as a pre-arbitration player that just was a starter in the All-Star game and has had very productive seasons for the Philadelphia Phillies in the regular season the past 2 years. So are we going to see there's two paths, right? I'm thinking about the meme where one path leads to the happy building or whatever, and the other one leads to the dark castle, and there's a guy standing there trying to decide which one to take. It's a meme. I could also use the old Robert Frost poem, but I'm not a big poet. Bottom line is we could either see the Alec Bohm spiral into they don't want me here. I've said in the past I don't want to be here. Maybe I was right. I already have struggles when I don't do well, so I'm just going to collapse further in on myself. Or we could see hey, maybe they're right. Maybe I need to pick stuff up, or maybe they're wrong, but I understand why they feel that way, the organization, with the way that I've acted. It's time for me to step up. It's time for me to reevaluate. It's either a look inside or a blame outside. And I'm not sure which way Alec Bohm is going to go. And I don't think that I would blame him either way, right? I'm not going to say Alec Bohm, mentally weak, loser baseball player, if he goes out and he has a tough season because mentally it's hard for him to get over the fact that a team that he really wanted to be with kind of wanted to trade him and get rid of him this offseason. I get that from a player's perspective, but it's best for the Phillies and probably best for Alec Bohm as well that he just embraces that he needs to be better, right? That's the thing. I will never fault people or athletes for being imperfect, especially mentally, because none of us are. But what I will say is it will be much better for the Philadelphia Phillies if Alec Bohm takes this like a mature adult and says, hey, this is my chance for growth and not my chance to double down on being annoyed at the Phillies or being annoyed at myself or being annoyed that I'm not getting things my way. That's not a great way to say it. Things aren't breaking my way when it comes to my performance on the field or the way the organization is treating me off of it. So I'm teetering on calling this the number one storyline of the Philadelphia Phillies season when it comes to individual players. Obviously, the number one storyline is, can the offense be consistent enough in approach that they can compete for a World Series? That's number one. But as far as individual storylines, I'm leaning towards saying, Alec Bohm's mental state, how he handles this mentality of team didn't want me, now I'm back, let's rock. That is the number one storyline for me right now. I may reevaluate as we get deeper into spring training for the Philadelphia Phillies 2025 season. He's an important player. He's going to be batting near the middle of the lineup again, and the Phillies need him to be mentally zoned in, or this team could collapse in on itself. And this is a great locker room and great leadership structure and everything like that. So he's in as good a situation as you could hope for a tough spot mentally, but it's on the individual. We'll see what Alec Bohm has in store for him in 2025. And we should find out pretty soon because spring training, I know it's not regular season action, but you will get some quotes from guys. You'll get a feel of how the locker room is going to be. And I hope that Alec Bohm handles his business professionally. And I also hope he has another great year. I root for the guy. I think he's a great baseball player. I just think he's got to mature a little bit. And maybe this was a situation that helps him grow into doing that. Coming up next, there's another guy that I don't want to say I don't root for, but I just don't really see the point of rooting for him because I don't know that there's any way for him to ever possibly make an impact on this team again in a positive way. And that sounds harsh, but that's reality of Taijuan Walker's situation with the Philadelphia Phillies. And now Taijuan Walker's whole media tour, not him, but the Phillies on his behalf. And I'm not saying he's asking, I'll explain, but people are saying good stuff about Taijuan Walker down in spring training. I'll tell you why that probably is as we wrap up today's episode. All right, so here's what's going on with the Taijuan Walker situation from my perspective. We know last year the guy flat out stunk. I'm not going to pull any punches. He was terrible. I wanted to see him off this team. I wanted to see the Phillies eat the money. I wanted to see them move on and just deal with the situation, and they chose not to. And the reason they chose not to was near the end of the season. You're preparing for a postseason push. He could at least eat innings. They didn't really need to win games because they were comfortably locked into their seating, it seemed like, where they were. So they're like, well, this dude, if he gets injured, whatever, but he can eat innings for guys that we want rested, right? They're not trying to get him hurt, but he was basically this human shield for the rotation. And then postseason, he didn't pitch. And then he comes back, right? And part of the reason that he's in spring training is because it doesn't really kill you to bring him to spring training. Right? He's got guaranteed money, so you're not saving any money by not putting him in camp. All you're doing is you're eating money for him to do nothing versus eating money to at least have him show up to camp and see if a miracle happens, right? So you never take the shot. It's like if some dude gave you a $10 chip at a casino and you're a terrible blackjack player, but you can't cash that chip. One of the rules is you cannot cash that chip in. For the $10 that it's worth. You have to use it to wager. Well, what are you going to do? Throw the chip in the trash, or you're just going to throw it on the game and see what happens? If you lose it, you lose it. You're going to lose it anyway. It was no value to you, but you could turn it into something potentially, even if it is a gamble. That's where Taijuan Walker is right now. Now, why are the Phillies speaking glowingly of Taijuan Walker? The one option that's probably least likely is that Taijuan Walker has worked incredibly hard this offseason and has turned his complete ability around as a pitcher. And it's not a knock on his work ethic. I don't think any of this is work ethic. I think it's just kind of washed for whatever reason, age, injuries, whatever. But it's not likely that he was able to do enough this offseason to completely turn around who he is as a pitcher at this point in his career. That's the least likely scenario of why people like Dave Dombrowski and Rob Thompson are saying great things. Taijuan Walker looks great, is basically what they're saying after the first day or two of him throwing down there as pitchers and catchers report. I don't think that's likely. The more likely option, I think, is this, that what's the ideal situation for the Philadelphia Phillies with Taijuan Walker? He's not going to be in the rotation. You don't really care about having him at AAA, and he's on a major league contract, so he'd have to accept being sent down, or he would just have to go through waivers and someone else would claim him, or he'd be outrighted and released or whatever. So he's not going to be in AAA. I don't think he's a fit for the final spot in the bullpen because he's not a bullpen pitcher. So he doesn't really have a spot on this team. Even if he has like a great camp, what are you going to send Jesus Luzardo, who you traded for, to the minors? No. What are you going to put him in the bullpen where he doesn't really seem to fit? No. Like, even if Taijuan Walker has a great camp, he doesn't really have a way onto this roster. So you're paying a guy a ridiculous amount of money. You're bringing him back into camp for a roster spot that doesn't exist. Why are you doing it? Let's see. I'll give you a second to answer. See if the smart ones out there can get this. They're trying to find a way to trade Taijuan Walker. That would be the best possible situation ahead of the start of the regular season. You go into camp, you have Taijuan Walker throw. You make sure he's healthy. You give him a couple opportunities to shine and show that he's got some solid stuff against AAA guys or whatever. Maybe some major leaguers mixed in there. You say some good stuff. Dave Dombrowski says, he looks great. We're excited about Taijuan. Rob Thompson says, yeah, he looks really good. He put in the work this offseason. And then you float him to organizations and you say, hey, we got this guy. We got Taijuan Walker. Look at him. He's been an all-star before. He's a major league veteran, innings eater, great guy. Look at all these numbers. He was rough last year, but we've been telling you, like, hey, he looks great this year. And then some team that needs like a fifth starter or something and wants to bolster their rotation a little bit more goes and trades for Taijuan Walker, and the Phillies get like their number 22 overall prospect or something. They get like a long shot prospect, and they eat some of the cash and they move on from it at less money that it would cost them, and they also get a little something back, right? That's the best case scenario for Taijuan Walker's remainder of his time with the Philadelphia Phillies. That's what this Taijuan Walker love is coming from. And I'm not trying to say like, I know he stinks, so they're lying to your face by saying he looks good. I didn't see him throw. So maybe he does look good. But like, even if he does, the point stands, he doesn't have a way onto this roster. So what's going on with Taijuan Walker? When you see this stuff, don't fall for it. Don't lose your mind over it. Don't waste your energy on it. When you see people saying like, oh, Taijuan Walker looked kind of good, it's not a push for him to make the team. There's no earthly way that Taijuan Walker, well, there is an earthly way, and that's, knock on wood, injuries. But like, if everything happens the way it's supposed to happen health-wise for the Philadelphia Phillies, Taijuan Walker's not going to be on the team. So it behooves the Philadelphia Phillies to talk him up a little bit, to get the trade value maybe up a little bit, to entice some other team to pay some price, not even a hefty price, some price, to take the Taijuan Walker situation off of your hands and save you a little bit of money, even just a teensy bit in the process. So I don't want anyone freaking out like, why are they acting like Taijuan Walker? If Taijuan Walker makes the team, he's not going to. He's not going to. He's not going to. I promise you right now, on February 13th, 2025, Taijuan Walker's not going to be on this Phillies team. But he can still help the organization by having a good-looking spring, getting moved. It'll be a better situation for him because he could still get opportunity to pitch at the major league level. I don't think Taijuan Walker is like a bad guy. I want this to be very clear. And apparently he has not been a bad teammate. He did mention after the 2023 postseason that he was upset he didn't pitch in the postseason. And listen, he's a competitor. And then it was proven in 2024 why he didn't pitch, because he was washed. But like, I'm not saying, well, this guy's a Philadelphia sports villain. He's not a terrible person. He's not a terrible teammate. I just think it's a better situation significantly for everybody if the Phillies move on from him. And that's a tough thing to do unless he goes out there and pitches well in spring training. So that's the whole Taijuan Walker situation, in case you were wondering why there's a little bit of this campaign of people saying he looks good in spring training. the rotation is set. The bullpen's just about all set. The starting lineup is set. I mean, the backups are set at some spots, or at least between two guys. And then the depth role we talked about, we'll see how that plays out. But as you see, there are a lot of interesting storylines for the Philadelphia Phillies spring training, but they exist in the margins. The major positions are basically all but locked down, which leads to this interesting dynamic of filling out the roster, focusing on the mentality, and also going about your business to cash in on the talent you think you have. It's not a bad spot to be if you're the Philadelphia Phillies. Got a couple more days till the position players report, but we'll continue to knock out episodes on pitchers and catchers and everything like that. So some more good stuff coming later this week, but that's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Once again, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating and reviewing if you're listening to this in podcast form. If you're watching on the YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It's free. It's easy. It gets you notifications when new episodes are posted. Just go to the Locked On Phillies channel, hit subscribe. You're never going to miss a thing about your Philadelphia Phillies. So I appreciate you joining us for today's episode. I'll talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.